Today, we're talking peptide skincare. I'm Dr. Sarah Shu, and I'm a Stanford-trained dermatologist. I think they're great for people who want anti-aging options that work for sensitive skin, and for people who already use anti-aging ingredients like retinoids, but they still want a little bit of a boost. I'll share what the three most popular peptides, Matrixyl, copper peptides, and Argireline can do, and I'll also share some options to try, including some that are just $10. What are peptides? Just tiny bits of protein. Proteins are long chains of amino acids or protein building blocks that are strung together like a necklace. The longest human protein has over 34,000 amino acids. Peptides are a lot smaller, something like 2, 5, or 20 amino acids that are linked up. The biggest myth I hear about peptides, whether they're in skincare or they're in supplements, is that they're just building blocks to make more protein, and that you should just eat more protein since they all have pretty much the same building blocks. But that's too simple of an explanation. Peptides are also cellular messengers. They tell your cells what to do, and different peptides carry different messages. Some peptides tell your skin to make more collagen and elastin, and others deliver minerals like copper, which your skin needs for things like wound healing. And some peptides relax muscles by blocking signals that cause muscle contraction. The confusing part is that there are dozens of different peptides that are used in skincare, and their names are ridiculously long and similar looking. For example, this is a list of peptides in just one serum that I've been using recently. To make things even more confusing, the most popular peptides can go by more than one name. Acetylhexapeptide 8, it used to be known as acetylhexapeptide 3, and it's also called Argireline. You shouldn't have to feel like you're studying for a chemistry test to know which peptides you're buying. If you can just learn the major players, you'll be off to a great start. Let's start with Matrixyl. In the beginning, Matrixyl was the trade name for just one peptide, palmitoyl pentapeptide 4. The company that trademarked it later trademarked other peptides like Matrixyl 3000 and Matrixyl Synth 6. So now Matrixyl can describe a family or a bunch of different peptides. They all share one key feature though. Their chemical structure has a palmitoyl part, which is a fatty acid that's attached to the peptide to help it penetrate your skin. Think of it kind of like a VIP pass at a concert. It helps the peptide get past the bodyguards and get backstage. The original Matrixyl is a 5 amino acid peptide that reminds your body of broken down collagen pieces. When your fibroblasts, which are your cells that make collagen, see these fragments in their environment, they get tricked. They think that your collagen has been damaged and needs replacing, so they get to work making more. When I'm thinking about adding ingredients to my skincare routine, I like to look at the evidence in human skin. Ideally, human skin that's still attached to living humans, not human cells in a dish. I saw this study and it compared a moisturizer with Matrixyl to placebo, which was the same moisturizer with no Matrixyl. The Matrixyl group showed small improvements in fine lines and wrinkles. But what surprised me the most is that the active moisturizer had just 3 ppm or 0.0003% Matrixyl. That is a lot less concentrated than many of the products that you're going to find today. FYI, this study was sponsored by Procter & Gamble. Industry funding is pretty common in cosmetic studies. Another study that's worth mentioning came out of Indonesia. This study tested Matrixyl on crow's feet for 8 weeks. And in this study too, there was a positive signal for Matrixyl improving fine lines with minimal irritation. This small study did not show statistically significant improvement, and like the other study, it was also industry sponsored. I don't mean that to say that these results are completely wrong and useless. If we ignored all industry sponsored studies in cosmetics, we would have very little evidence to make any decisions on. But it's still something that I like to keep in the back of my mind if results sound too good to be true, or if they're not consistent with results from other studies. Next up, copper peptides. When people talk about copper peptides, most of the time they're talking about one particular tripeptide, GHK copper or GHK-Cu, also known as copper tripeptide 1. The GHK refers to the 3 amino acids that make up the tripeptide, glycine, histidine, and lysine, and Cu means that it binds to copper ions. GHK copper is found naturally in your blood, but the amount that you have falls a lot as you get older. Copper peptides like GHK bind to copper and help deliver it to proteins that need it, like lysyl oxidase, which forms crosslinks in collagen and makes it sturdier, and another enzyme called superoxide dismutase, which neutralizes free radicals. In fibroblast cell cultures, copper peptides also directly stimulate collagen and elastin production. Pretty amazing for a tiny molecule, right? But because I'm a picky person and also no fun at parties, I'd like to point out that these are just cell studies. Cells bathing in a solution containing copper peptides in a dish. When you apply copper peptides to your skin, they're not getting anywhere near your dermis, the deeper layer of skin where your fibroblasts actually live. And that's why results from intact living skin are much more meaningful to me. In one study, copper peptides sped up wound healing in rats compared to placebo. I found a small trial on copper tripeptide 1 that showed significant improvement in wrinkle size after 8 weeks compared to people who used a placebo cream or a cream containing Matrixyl 3000. And one study showing no change in healing or final results after laser resurfacing when copper peptides were added to a post-procedure cream. So overall for copper peptides, I would say there are some promising cell studies and some weak mixed evidence in humans. Finally, let's talk about Argireline, the peptide that's been called Botox in a jar. Argireline is also called acetylhexapeptide 8, and it has the most extreme marketing of any peptide. This product's marketing team calls Argireline the non-injectable way to firm, smooth skin. I really dislike this kind of marketing. That's just my opinion. And I say that as someone who doesn't make money from Botox injections because I am a boring person who likes to practice medical dermatology. Like Botox, Argireline targets something called the snare complex, which is a set of proteins that let nerve cells tell muscles to contract. When you block these signals, you reduce muscle contractions. Your nerves try to tell your muscles to contract, but your muscles never get the message. It's like sending a package in the mail and a porch pirate swipes it before the person gets it. Because Argireline and Botox both target this nerve to muscle communication, that's why marketers like to call Argireline Botox in a jar. But there's at least one critical difference between Argireline and Botox, right? Delivery method. Botox is injected using a needle directly into muscles where that nerve to muscle communication is happening. When you apply Argireline to your skin to get to your muscle, it has to pass through all the layers of your epidermis or your outer layer of skin, the basement membrane between your epidermis and dermis, the entire dermis or deeper layer of skin, all the subcutaneous fat, and then it can finally reach your muscle. Around your eyes, where those layers are the thinnest, it has the best shot at penetration. But Argireline is not some tiny molecule, and it's not hydrophilic or water-loving. It doesn't even have the special ability to penetrate the stratum corneum the way Matrixyl peptides do with their VIP pass. So, like usual, I disagree with the Botox in a jar marketing. Moving on to human data, this study tested 10% Argireline on crow's feet and compared it to placebo cream on the opposite side for 30 days. Take a look at the wrinkles on this 38-year-old woman. A wrinkle on the placebo side looked similar to baseline after 30 days, but the Argireline side showed a noticeably shallower and narrower wrinkle. Another study provided more weak evidence that Argireline reaches the muscles around the eyes by looking at a medical condition called blepharospasm. Blepharospasm is a condition where your eyelid muscles twitch or squeeze shut uncontrollably. Sometimes this is treated with Botox injections to relax those muscles. Because Botox wears off, most of the people in the study were getting injections every 3 months. This study tested whether adding Argireline cream could help people with blepharospasm go longer than their usual 3 months between Botox injections. 4 out of the 12 people in the active group were able to space out their Botox injections. One person was even able to go 7 months between injections instead of their normal 3. Even though this study wasn't about cosmetic outcomes, it gave weak support that at least in a small number of people, Argireline was able to relax superficial facial muscles. And finally, another study used advanced imaging software to measure Argireline's wrinkle-reducing effects objectively. After 4 weeks, they saw minimal change in wrinkles, and the authors said Argireline cannot be considered a botulinum toxin alternative. Bottom line, some studies showed a little softening of wrinkles, but it's not going to be as effective as Botox. Okay, so I said I would focus on Matrixyl, copper peptides, and Argireline, but I want to throw in this little tidbit about a peptide called dipeptide diaminobutyryl benzylamide diacetate. You may have seen it advertised on products as the trademark name SYN-AKE. When I first heard the name SYN-AKE, I thought it was kind of silly. SYN-AKE makes me think of snake oil. You don't want people to think of your products as snake oil, right? But this peptide was designed to act like snake venom. To be exact, venom from a snake called the temple viper. The SYN-AKE peptide copies the way temple viper venom blocks muscle contraction and paralyzes people. So at least there's a legitimate reason why it's called this goofy name. In this study, women used a 4% SYN-AKE cream or a placebo cream. And after a month, the SYN-AKE group saw some pretty cool changes. In this picture, areas where graders saw more improvement are bright pink, and areas with less improvement are shaded in light pink. The biggest improvement with the SYN-AKE cream was on the forehead wrinkles and crow's feet. Another interesting observation from this study, researchers had volunteers make angry, frowning faces to see if SYN-AKE softens expression lines, things like crow's feet when you smile or forehead lines when you raise your eyebrows. And it seemed to work, but only on the forehead. When the women frowned, the SYN-AKE group had 14% less wrinkle length and 13.5% less wrinkle area. So like other peptides we've talked about, there is some evidence for wrinkle improvement with SYN-AKE too. If you found this video to be helpful so far, I'd appreciate if you could press the like button for me. It helps me teach more friends about their skin. One thing I want to point out is that even in studies that said peptides work, the effect size seems to be pretty small. For example, I'm not sure if I would notice a 14% decrease in wrinkle length on myself or on anyone else either. I still use peptide skincare because there's still some evidence they work, and I haven't had issues with irritation even though I have pretty sensitive skin. And many peptide products are pretty affordable, so you don't have to ruin your budget to try them. But there's one thing that makes choosing peptide skincare really challenging. Most products do not say how much peptides are in there. This is especially true for products that have a combination of peptides. You can figure out which peptides are in a product by looking at the ingredient list, but it's much harder to find out how much is actually in a product. With that in mind, I'll walk you through options at every budget level. Starting with my budget-friendly picks from The Ordinary. You can't really talk about topical peptides without mentioning The Ordinary. Their Matrixyl 10% plus HA serum costs just $10.90 for 30 ml, and it contains Matrixyl 3000 and a different Matrixyl called SYN-AKE. They also have a separate 10% Argireline serum for $9.70. Since these are so affordable and contain different peptides, you can buy them and use them at the same time. TikTok called this combo Botox in a bottle. Again, take that with a grain of salt. This Refinery 29 reporter saw some impressive results. For a more all-in-one option, their multi-peptide serum has Matrixyl 3000, Matrixyl SYN-AKE, Argireline, and SYN-AKE. It's also reasonably priced at $19.90. Once you get into these multi-peptide serums, though, it's a lot harder to know what you're getting since you can't find the amounts of the peptides that are in it. The total peptide content by weight is 25.1%, but you don't know how much of that is the Matrixyls or SYN-AKE. Their most complete option is their multi-peptide plus copper peptides 1% at $32 for 30 ml. It has the peptides in the multi-peptide serum I mentioned, plus 1% copper peptides or GHK copper. You know that you're getting 1% copper peptides in the serum, but like with the multi-peptide serum, you don't know how much of the other peptides you're getting. I usually use copper peptide products at night though, because I notice a slight change in my skin tone when I use them during the day, because they are a really deep blue color. These serums are a great way to keep things simple and try multiple peptides in one product. Another serum I like is Maylove's Peptide Squad Serum. This serum has copper peptides, Argireline, and Matrixyl, and it also puts a big emphasis on anti-inflammatory and hydration ingredients like niacinamide, ceramides, and bisabolol. It's more of an all-in-one peptide plus barrier support and hydration serum. That said, I don't think that the serum is moisturizing enough to use on its own, even though I really like it. I always use it with a hydrating toner like Estura's Cream Mist and a richer moisturizer on top for dry spots. This serum has the same issues that The Ordinary's multi-peptide serums do. We know which peptides are in it, but we don't know how much. Also, because of the copper peptide content, this serum is naturally dark blue too, so I mostly use it at night. Finally, I'll end with a luxury option. Some of my friends really like luxury skincare. Like, if something costs under $100, they don't trust that it'll do anything. I personally use a lot more things that are on the budget or middle price end of the spectrum. But for the fancy people out there, SkinCeuticals has a serum called P-Tiox. P-Tiox? P-Tiox? P-Tox. Anyway, the star ingredient in this serum is something that they call Advanced Peptide Complex. That sounds unique and exclusive, but if you look at the ingredients list with me, The hexapeptide is acetylhexapeptide 8. That's Argireline, which we've seen in a lot less expensive products already. And the dipeptide is dipeptide diaminobutyryl benzylamide diacetate, which is SYN-AKE. These are peptides you can find in less expensive products. Like the other companies I mentioned, SkinCeuticals doesn't say the exact concentrations of the peptides. So it's hard to know how much you're getting and if they're similar to the concentrations that were used in studies. The main advantage of this serum, though, is clinical testing. Smaller brands cannot match the SkinCeuticals research budget. These results are manufacturer funded, but for this exact product, they tested the product on over 100 women, including a split face design on about 40 of them. And after 12 weeks of use, treated skin showed a 20% reduction in fine lines. That's different from most other products where you have to make more assumptions and leaps of faith. For example, there's a study showing that SYN-AKE seems to work at 4%. So maybe this completely unrelated product will work too because it also has SYN-AKE, even though I don't even know how much SYN-AKE is actually even in it. With the SkinCeuticals product, you have results from a study on this exact product. Whether that's worth $150 for 30 mLs, that's your decision. A 10 to 20% reduction in wrinkle size sounds like a lot, but when people are looking at you in person, not under a microscope, that's not as dramatic as you might think. So, are peptides worth it? Yes, as far as cosmetic ingredients go, they have decent evidence supporting their use. They can be found in budget friendly products, and they're generally low irritation. They won't replace a healthy lifestyle and sun protection or have the same results as office procedures, but they're useful tools to have in your skincare tool belt, and you can find them in products that won't wreck your budget. Unless you're a fancy person and you want to do that, but that's on you. My community is always teaching me about new products. Please leave a comment if you've had a good or bad experience with peptide skincare. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks for watching.